All right, we've got our bottom of our mold right here that we had popped off, and we remember wrapped with the wet paper towel around just the outside edge. And then we've got our top of our piece that we're going to pop off this mold here, and it's going to go on top of this piece right here. So just a trick again, remember, pull it off to the side a little bit so then you can kind of go around and loosen the edges. And so I'm just spinning, kind of loosening the edges here. And there you can see it popped off. Now, you notice it took me a little while, but I went all the way around and it will pop off the mold that way. Okay, so this piece, I'm going to set over here to the side, and then it's going to go on top of this piece here. But I have to score and slip first. So I'm going to take my rib tool, and I'm going to score the top here. And then I'm going to take my slip, and remember my slip is a mixture of clay and water. And just a reminder, if your slip starts to get dry, because I had someone come over and say, oh, my slip is dry. Well, remember, you just have to add water to it and kind of mix it up a little bit. And sometimes I take like the extra kind of hard clay that we have left over, and I add it to the slip, and then I just add some water to it and make more slip as we need. All right, so I've got my slip on there, and then I'm going to flip this over, score this side of my drape mold, and remember the top, because I made that opening, I'm going to put it on the top. And remember, this was why it was important to make sure that bottom starts to get hard so it can support the weight of this top one here. And you can see that there's a seam here, and there's some gaps. Well, what I'm going to do is take some brand new clay in those gaps, and I'm going to just kind of push that into the gaps here. And I'm going to put my hand in the inside to support it as I kind of push here. And I'm going to do that all the way around, sealing that kind of gap. So I'm just rolling a coil here, pushing it into that gap where that hole was. And then I'm kind of smoothing it out. And I'll have some more time to smooth it out. I'll use my rib tool and smooth that seam out. You don't want to wait in 4 or 5 days until you put the top on, because you need the pieces to have consistency as far as clay. And if you wait too long to try to add the top on, what is going to happen is when this dries, it'll crack right down where the seam is. We don't want that to happen. So again, I'm rolling a little coil here, kind of putting it in that gap. My hand is in the inside supporting it, and then I'm smoothing it down. So I'm kind of pushing down here. Getting over that seam. And once I do this on the inside, I also need to do this on the outside as well as the inside. So I'm doing it on the outside now, and then I've got to do it on the inside, because you'll have a seam on the inside if you don't do the inside as well. So keep that in mind. So I'm almost back to where I started. Got a little bit left to go here on the outside. Sometimes this is why a bigger mold or bowl that you're doing is a little bit easier, because especially because you can get your hand in there a lot easier. Just a little bit left here. Seal up that seam. With that new clay. And then on the inside, I want to roll some coils again off to the side here. I'm going to roll some coils. And I'm going to take those coils, and on the inside, I'm going to work them into that seam. And if you're having a hard time reaching in there, a modeling tool like this will work, where I can get in here and move my hand up and down if you need to. But right now, my hand's working pretty well as I get in there. And notice on the outside edge, I'm holding with this hand as I am kind of smoothing along that seam. So I'm going to roll another coil now. And smooth it into that seam. And I want to hold on the outside. It's really important so that you don't break the seal on the outside here. Okay, and I'm taking my hand like this, my finger, and I'm just moving it along that seam as I'm holding on the outside and really smoothing it in there. And now I'm going to roll that other coil and do the same thing on the rest of the seam here, and then smooth it in. All right, looks pretty good as I check the inside. Now I'm going to check the outside and make sure I didn't push any of those seams out. There's a few spots here that I'm going to put some extra clay here. Smooth that out into that seam, like pushing it into that seam. All right, then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my rib tool and go over that seam, because ideally you don't want to be able to tell that you join those two pieces together. So I'm taking that rib tool, kind of scraping. I'm working that clay into the seam here. And smoothing this out. Do this right away. Don't think, oh, I can do this at the end. You want to do this while the clay is still pliable, that you can do this and it doesn't break on you or crack. Notice I'm just kind of spinning this and turning it as I'm going, scraping with that rib tool, pulling off that excess. Trying to make this nice and even on the way around. Okay, you can kind of see here. All right, there's a little divot here. You can see that. So I'm going to take some new clay, press that into that area, smooth it out, and then I can kind of scrape it. There we go. Just smoothing that with that. Okay, there's like a little bump here where it sticks out a little bit, so I'm just kind of scraping that with the rib tool, kind of shaving it off a little bit to make it more symmetrical looking, smooth, kind of like Maria Martinez did in her work. Okay, so that's the next step. You want to make sure it's nice and smooth. That seam is sealed up. You coil on the inside and the outside and really smooth it out.